Jungles are teeming with mysteries just waiting to be uncovered. Some of these discoveries are rooted in history, while others are so unusual they almost seem unreal. Among the most astonishing is the so-called Galaxy Ghost Ship, an enormous spotless vessel discovered deep within a jungle. With that included, here are 20 strange jungle discoveries that will truly blow your mind. Number 20. Glow-in-the-dark mushrooms. In Brazil, they quite literally found glow-in-the-dark mushrooms. Ironically, these mushrooms were once discovered back in 1840, but after that initial discovery, they were not found again until 2009. As you can imagine, that wasn't an easy trick to do, as you could only go and find these mushrooms in the dark to see if they actually glowed. The glow in these mushrooms is the result of a chemical reaction called bioluminescence, in which an enzyme acts on a molecule and it produces light. Scientists believe that the glow may serve various purposes, like attracting insects that help in spore dispersal, or maybe as a defense mechanism to warn predators of their toxicity. The glow of these mushrooms intrigued the indigenous cultures and modern scientists alike, sparking curiosity about their role within the complex ecosystem of the Amazon. The rainforest is home to some of the most remarkable natural wonders, including these glowing mushrooms. They're found primarily on decaying wood, and they thrive in humid and nutrient-rich environments in the Amazon. It is certainly not something that you would expect from mushrooms, but it's also what makes it so strange. Number 19. The Amazonian floating forests. On a slightly more uplifting note, we now go to the great Amazonian floating forests, which are exactly what they sound like. They're actual floating forests that are home to both animals and people. And though the people there are definitely in the minority, it's a really dangerous place to be, given all the snakes and gators and whatnot that also live there. So then, how does a floating forest get made? Well, it's actually a complex cycle of life and death that occurs because of the flooding that takes place there. Long story short, a bunch of dead grass forms on the water, and then tree seeds grow on it, and boom, you have a floating forest. It sounds kind of fantastical, but it's actually very real, and people are fascinated by it for all kinds of reasons. Number 18. The unknown. Here's the thing. Everything that I've talked about in this video is stuff that is actually known to exist in the world. Yet, if you were to ask if that's all there is to know from these areas, well, you would probably be wrong. Because of the vastness of certain jungles, especially ones like the Amazon, we only know of a paltry amount of things that are actually there and the things that live in there. It was made for kitchen tables, but later. Now, part of the mystery and the strangeness of the jungle is that there's just so much more to be uncovered. And it's unknown when or even if we'll ever be able to figure it all out. That's why people keep on making expeditions into jungles of all shapes and sizes. They want the unknown to actually be known in the end. Number 17. The witch's house. When you hear the term witch's house, you may believe that a witch lived in it in some kind of form once upon a time, but that is not the case here. The land was bought and the house was built by a regular guy back in 1656. The family then continued to live on the land until Peter Madsen Peterson made the house that would then become known as Flintholm. He built it in the 1930s and it still stands today. So then why is it called a witch's house? Well, that's because people say that it kind of looks like one, and they just wanted to make it into a tourist attraction. Number 16. Ancient City of Karakol. I've probably made my point by now about how there are all kinds of ancient lost cities all over the jungles of the world. But this time we're in Belize, because it's here that you will find Karakol, which was another famous city that the Maya had during their reign. It was a key city during their reign for political reasons. And when you look at the city, you'll find that it's bigger than anything in Belize today. That's right, the Mayans didn't do small. Yet, when they fell away, the city was lost until accidentally being rediscovered once again in 1937. Ever since then, it has become a haven for scientists and tourists alike. Now it's time for today's topic. In early 2025, a hiker trekking deep through a remote stretch of rainforest in South America made a discovery that has stunned archaeologists and explorers alike. Hidden beneath layers of mist and dense foliage was what appeared to be the rusting hull of an enormous ship, wedged impossibly on a cliff face, hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean. The structure, overgrown with moss, vines, and trees, looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Its steel plating was corroded but still intact, and parts of the deck had collapsed under the weight of vegetation. Curious, the hiker ventured inside, finding eerie remnants of human presence, rusted bunks, broken lanterns, and scattered crates marked with shipping codes long since erased by time. Experts who later examined the site were baffled. No known records indicate a vessel of this size was ever transported inland. Some speculate it could have been washed upriver during a cataclysmic flood centuries ago, while others whisper of wartime experiments meant to conceal military technology. So far, authorities have not released an official explanation, and the ship remains sealed off from the public. But one unsettling question lingers. How did a massive sea vessel end up stranded in the heart of a jungle cliff? Number 15. Lost City of Giants. Now we head to Ecuador, where yet another lost city has been found. And this one was one that was believed to have been created by giants. Why did some of the local people believe that? Well, there are two reasons. First of all, there were tools that were found near some of the giant structures which resided there, and those tools themselves were massive in size, which helped to spread the legend of a giant race of people who made these massive constructions and then vanished from the earth. Now, before you laugh, do recall that many cultures have tales about giants. There were incredibly tall structures there, which included a steep pyramid that was 80 meters tall. And when you look at them from the ground level, giants might actually come to mind. Number 14. Monkey God City. You may not have believed me when I said that numerous lost cities have been found in jungles all over the world, but here are the results of a search for the lost city of the monkey god in Honduras. Also known as the White City due to how it was built, this was one that people had literally been searching for over a century. I mean, just think about it. All those people trying to come together to find this place and then eventually getting it. In the early 2000s, scientists first identified an area of what could be the lost city. In 2015, which was some 75 years after American explorer Theodore Moore unearthed thousands of artifacts during his expedition to La Mesquitia, eventually the city would be found. And it was such a momentous occasion that a documentary was put out about the search for the monkey god city. Number 13. The Boiling River. Welcome to Peru, specifically the Peruvian part of the Amazon jungle and rainforest and the Amazon River. Yes, I'm focusing on a key subsidiary of the Amazon River for this entry, as it gives brand new meaning to the phrase hot water. You see, the locals have known about the so-called boiling river for decades, and they've been using it to do all sorts of things like wash their clothing, cook their food, and even more. However, it was not until a geologist went looking for the river that he actually found that it wasn't only real, it was really, really hot. How hot, you would say? Well, how about 93 degrees Celsius, which is super duper hot? You wouldn't want to touch that with your skin. And that brings up the question of how did the river get formed? Well, nobody really knows. Now, this is a true mystery of the Amazon. It's not being heated up by something like a volcano, as the closest one is actually hundreds of kilometers away. And furthermore, there's no obvious geothermal vent that's heating the water up to such temperatures. Plus, it's only heating up a certain section of the river, and some feel that there may be something deep in the ground causing it, but that's only speculation at best. The river is truly too hot to handle. Oh, this is hot. Is it that hot? And yet, the locals are just fine using it because, well, it's handy. You got to use what you got, right? Number 12. El Mirador. The one thing about jungles that cannot be denied is that when they want to, they can grow all over the place and consume just about anything. If you don't believe me, well, take a look at El Mirador. The pictures and videos that you're seeing may not do the place justice, but this was once a capital city of the great Mayan Empire. Yes, that Mayan Empire. You know, the people who once predicted the ending of the world in 2012. At its peak, El Mirador had about 200,000 people in it, and it was just one of a larger system of cities that the people had built to house over 1 million people. Clearly, they knew how to make a civilization and build it to last. Yet, ironically, it didn't last. They actually vanished without a trace. And with nothing to stop the jungles from growing, they slowly consumed their once great cities. Many likened the finding of El Mirador to that of finding Pompeii. After all, it was right there beneath our noses, and we just had to uncover what the planet had covered up. And to this day, we are still finding lost cities like El Mirador in jungles and forests all over the world. Number 11. Costa Rican stone spheres. Now, look, I know it sounds basic, but rocks are a key part of the world, and they have been the literal building blocks for all kinds of wonderful things that are all over the place. I just showed you an epic rock fortress for Pete's sake. However, if you go to Costa Rica, you're going to find something on the opposite end of the rock spectrum. Specifically, you will find a set of 300 perfectly shaped rock spheres that are scattered out all over the place. And no one is exactly sure about the reason for that. To the locals, they're known as bolas de piedra, aka stone balls, and they're said to be attributed to the now extinct culture that once was there in the pre-Columbian indigenous culture of Costa Rica, which flourished from 8700 to 1530. Regardless of who it is that made them or when they were exactly made, the key focus on them is why. Carving rocks is an ancient custom across virtually every civilized culture and even ones of Neolithic origins. But to make 300 perfectly shaped spheres, ones that are of different sizes and that are put in various places all over Costa Rica, well, yeah, that strikes people as odd. And I do mean different sizes literally, as some of them are just a few centimeters in diameter, while others are about 2 meters. You don't only shape rocks that size until you know there's a purpose for it, you know. Plus, they're not all made out of the same materials. Some are made of limestone, while others are made from sandstone. Given the curiosities that surround them, it is fair to understand why some people would look at them as some part of a bigger picture, while others just look at them as nicely shaped rocks. I guess that both can be true in this case. Number 10. Lord Hanuman's giant footprints. Now we go from a haunting tale to a godly one. In India, the Hindu pantheon is full of incredible beings that were said to have forged the world at one point in time or another. And among the greats is that of Lord Hanuman, who was the great devotee to the one and only Lord Rama. The reason that many people are aware of this monkey god is because of Lord Hanuman's giant footprints. You see, throughout parts of India there are indentations in the ground, both in solid rock and on soft ground, where giant footprint shapes are clearly visible. It's not even visible in the, oh, it kind of looks like a footprint way. It looks exactly like giant footprints. As you can imagine, these locations are key worshipping places amongst the Hindu faithful, as they feel it's a clearly defined presence of their monkey god. Just as important is that these footprints are not only rooted in India, they can be found in multiple nations all throughout Asia. There are some in Thailand, Sri Lanka, and more, and they all have the same curiously similar footprint design. So how is this explained then? Is there really a monkey god among us? Or at the very least, one that existed among the world long ago? It's honestly kind of hard to say. If it were just a singular footprint in the mud or the stone, you could make a claim that it was just carved there or implanted in order to create a legend, which many people have done before. However, having the footprints all across an entire continent, well, that's another matter altogether. Plus, there are some claims that these footprints are truly millions of years old, which would put quite the twist on things. Number 9. Pyramids of the Amazon. Given the size of the Amazon jungle, it is not shocking to hear that people lived in it for countless numbers of years. In fact, there are still native tribes who fight to keep their native lands away from those who had lived there today. The question has always been how advanced some of the ancient cultures who lived there were. Well, when scientists decided to go and do some satellite mapping of the area, they realized that in parts of the jungle within Bolivia, things may have been more powerful than previously conceived. Specifically, they found structures which resembled pyramids that indicate the civilizations that lived there were as advanced as beings like the Maya and the Aztecs who would later roam the lands. Researchers also identified remnants of vast causeways, canals, and elevated fields, suggesting a complex agricultural system that could support large populations. These findings challenge the old assumption that the Amazon was sparsely inhabited by only small, scattered tribes. Instead, evidence points toward thriving societies capable of engineering large-scale infrastructure in the heart of the rainforest. Some of the geometric earthworks uncovered from above measure hundreds of feet across, implying not only advanced construction skills but also a high degree of social organization. Archaeologists believe these sites may have been ceremonial centers, trade hubs, or even proto-cities hidden beneath centuries of vegetation. Such discoveries are slowly rewriting the history of South America, showing that the Amazon was far from an untouched wilderness. While things are still up in the air as to what it all actually means, it goes to show that this jungle still has a lot of secrets to be unearthed. Number 8. Humpback whale. I will admit, finding a dead humpback whale is something that's strange to see when you're in a jungle. It's also important to remember that humpback whales don't exactly do small in any measure of the word. Even baby whales can weigh several tons, and that's exactly what was found on an island at the base of the Amazon River. This island was right off of Brazil, and the whale wasn't only found in the jungle. It was found quite inland, which shouldn't have been possible given its size. Except that there's a twist to the tale, because to understand why that whale ended up in the jungle, you don't have to focus on the whale or even the jungle, but on the water. You see, the island is always dealing with rising tides. But when this particular whale came ashore, it was during a period when the tide would rise up 4 whole meters. Now, that's more than enough to take the water itself inland and then be gone before someone came around and the ground was dry and solid again, or the key. And so that's exactly what experts say this water did. But how did the whale get caught in its mixture? Well, it's easy to partially answer. Experts believe that the whale had actually died at sea. Nobody knows why. And then the tide caught it and then swept it inland when the water got high. As we all know, when water gets you, even a whale cannot help but be washed up wherever the tide may lead. Number 7. Sigiriya. There are some parts of the world that you can't help but look at with awe and wonder. And I would argue that this place in Sri Lanka is one such example of that. You see, it's a massive outcropping of stone that eventually became a legendary fortress that people of the nation and beyond revere to this day. In fact, there are some who would address this place as the 8th wonder of the world. If you look at the more legendary history of the place, you're going to find that it's tied to King Kashapa, who created the place to hide from his brother. And so, the fortress was made. However, eventually that fortress was also destroyed, and a Buddhist monastery was built instead. One doesn't have to look very hard to see why monks would find such a place perfect for things like meditating and enjoying the beauty of the world around them. Fast forward to now, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which means that it's protected by law and cannot be taken down or disturbed. That all being said, you can visit the place and see how ancient architecture and design was handled in the ancient times. While nature and man do not always work well together, it can occasionally create something truly picturesque and beautiful. And this place is one such example of that. So if you're near Sri Lanka one day, I would recommend you check it out. Number 6. Galaxy Ghost Ship. Now, you may not have been able to guess where we would begin things, but a ship in the jungle, especially one of this size, might not have been on your top 10 list. You could even label this one man find ship in jungle. But when he looks inside, because this is once again not something you're going to expect. For this first entry, we find ourselves in Thailand on an island where an explorer wrote about his journey in the Huffington Post with his best friend, and they were loving the island life that they were partaking in. And if you read the Huffington Post article, he writes some rather suggestive things before getting to the ghost ship that he apparently found. Him and his BFF were just doing some light exploring when they ventured upon a ship. And while that wouldn't be surprising at first, as it is an island that they were on, he made it clear that this boat was one that had crashed on the shores of the island and seemed to scar the beach that it rested on. What was immediately shocking to the man was not the size of the craft, but the fact that it was rather immaculate. The reason that would be shocking to some is that over time, many ghost ships have become overridden by either nature or man. Sometimes graffiti and other clear markings of human presence become obvious there, which can make it dangerous to visit. However, as the two entered the craft, everything was actually clean. There was no sign of any kind of destruction or wear and tear, as it was though the craft was just ready to set sail, but there was nobody there to man it. Eventually, the two left the ship, and they began asking around the island about it. And that's where things, well, they just get a little bit more strange. At first, they couldn't get anyone to talk about the ship, and then when they did find out that people had died on that ship, the only reason that it's clean is because people will occasionally open it up as a hotel, but only if there's no other options available to people, as they don't want more people to die. Number 5. Amazonian tribes. Now, I talked about this one before, but let's dive deeper into it now. As noted, it's not strange to hear that people and cultures once lived in the Amazon jungle. But what might be strange is that some undisturbed tribes do still live there, and that people in power are doing everything they can to get rid of them. This may sound like the plot of a movie, but it is actually very real. The destruction of the Amazon is leading to the tribes that still remain there having to be in constant struggle just to survive. In fact, some tribes that live there have been completely wiped out due to illegal actions by both people and the local government. Deep within the rainforest, there are reports of entire communities being driven from their ancestral lands, their homes destroyed by bulldozers or set ablaze to make room for cattle ranching and logging. Armed groups tied to powerful interests often intimidate or outright kill tribal members who resist, leaving behind a chilling silence where vibrant cultures once thrived. Some of these tribes, still uncontacted by the modern world, vanish without ever being given a voice or recognition of their rights. Conservationists and activists risk their own safety to document these atrocities, often facing death threats themselves. Satellite images have captured the scars of illegal logging operations, exposing the speed and scale at which the jungle, and the people within it, are disappearing. Yet, despite the evidence, political corruption and greed ensure little protection is offered to the indigenous communities. The struggle of these tribes is not just about land, but about survival against overwhelming odds and indifference. Their stories, often silenced or ignored, echo the broader tragedy of the Amazon as it continues to shrink under relentless exploitation. Why are they doing that? Well, that's because they want the resources that the tribespeople are living on, and they don't care if they have to kill in order to get them. Number 4. Rings of the Amazon. I've talked about this particular jungle and rainforest in the intro, but now I'm going to dive into it for real. The Amazon is one of the most biodiverse places in the world, and that means that it's a haven for all sorts of those who are brave enough to go in and attempt to find a brand new species. However, sometimes they do get more questions than answers, such as when you look at the rainforest jungle from above in key spots, and you'll notice that there are rings that are crafted into the ground. A series of square, straight, and ring-like ditches scattered throughout the Bolivian and Brazilian Amazon were there before the rainforest existed. Or at least that's what those who have studied them believe. What is clear by what we now know is that they were made by human hands. Now, don't get me wrong, if Mother Nature wanted to, she likely could have constructed some of them. But the number and shape of them highlight that this is indeed from humans that lived in the rainforest and jungle long ago. The big question becomes, what were they used for? Now, honestly, nobody knows, and it does raise all sorts of questions about what these unknown groups did to the area before other cultures moved them out or they simply all died out. For example, it's easy to look at them and think they had a purpose in either agriculture or were used in some kind of defensive structure, but it's impossible to know for sure. Some people think that it proves how the ancient Amazonians, whoever they were, had a big hand in shaping what is now the Amazon jungle and rainforest, and that their impact is far greater than anyone ever expected. It also makes it rather tragic that we're more focused on tearing down the trees from all sides of the Amazon versus trying to study it more. Number 3. Breathing forest. Now, I know that this is a forest and not a jungle, but it's a quite cool clip, so we're just gonna roll with it. This guy was out in a forest in Quebec, Canada, and he came across something rather shocking. As you can see, the forest is actually breathing, and that's not how forests are supposed to work. At first, viewers online speculated wildly. Some thought it looked like the forest floor was alive, while others joked about a giant creature lurking just beneath the soil. The eerie rise and fall of the ground made the scene look like the earth itself had lungs, expanding and contracting in a way that was both mesmerizing and unsettling. For a brief moment, it felt like a scene from a fantasy or horror film, where the land itself is sentient and responding to intruders. The clip quickly spread across social media, drawing millions of views and sparking debates among nature enthusiasts, conspiracy theorists, and everyday onlookers. Some suggested it was the work of underground rivers or even tectonic movement, while others believed it could be proof of hidden ecosystems reacting to weather in unseen ways. The reality, though less mystical, was still fascinating. The combination of strong winds and shallow root systems caused the ground to ripple like a living carpet. In a way, the sight was a reminder of just how interconnected and dynamic forests are. What looks solid beneath your feet may actually be a delicate, shifting balance of trees, soil, and wind. Now, naturally, he shared the clip online to try and figure out what it was that was going on. And eventually, he and other curious people got their answer. There was a heavy wind going on in the area, and the trees that made up that forest had large roots that went everywhere. So, as the wind pushed up on the trees, the roots lifted up, and it moved the ground, and all of that swaying and whatnot of the trees meant the ground looked like it was breathing, which is pretty cool if you ask me. Number 2. The Sentinelese tribe. Let's now go from gods to men, and specifically a group of men and women that exist on exactly one island in the world. Why am I talking about this group of people? Well, that's easy because they want to be left the hell alone, and they're not afraid to get violent to make sure that that happens. I'm talking about the Sentinelese tribe that exists on North Sentinel Island out in the Indian Ocean, an island that technically belongs to India. The catch is that it's not advised or even legal to be able to interact with the Sentinelese people, as it likely is going to result in your death. And I'm not exactly joking. To say that contact with these people has been a bit hit or miss, well, that would be an understatement. For example, once upon a time, a British man came to the island and managed to kidnap 6 of its people before once again sailing off. And you wonder why a lot of people in that area don't really like them. Oh, but that's just one of many assorted tales concerning the Sentinelese. For example, a little over a decade before that kidnapping incident, an Indian merchant vessel accidentally crashed on the island. Some of the crew did survive and made it to the shore. However, after a few days of being stranded, they were then attacked by the tribe, and the people only just held them off until they could be rescued. Now, remember that British man who kidnapped some of the tribesmen to show them off to his superiors? Most of them actually died, and the 2 that did live were then returned to the island with gifts. That is, according to that man's account. And if you're still not sure, well, later on there was an escaped convict who fled to the island, and the Sentinelese killed him. In 2006, some fishermen went a bit too close to that island, and they were killed, and so on and so forth. And you get the picture. Going there is now an illegal act because these people clearly want to be left alone by the outside world, and they're not afraid to get violent in order to ensure that that happens. Number 1. Bigfoot. If you thought that I was going to talk about strange things being found in wooded areas and not talk about the various legends about Bigfoot, well, come on. You should know better by now. This channel never misses an opportunity to get weird when the topic allows for it. Yes, it is true that most people claim to have seen Bigfoot and its cousins in woods and forests versus the jungle, but there have been cases of people claiming to have seen them in jungle areas in the past. In truth, so long as it's a giant place with a bunch of trees and it's in the Western Hemisphere, there's a good chance that somebody has claimed to have seen Bigfoot. On the whole, there's no true evidence that Bigfoot or even its cousins do exist. But does that stop people from trying to prove that it's real? No, not in the slightest. And if you watch certain channels that are centered around cryptids, you know that they do try and go big in appealing to that fan base. Networks like Animal Planet and Discovery Channel do have shows like Finding Bigfoot, and yet they never do find him. It's almost as if they're doing a show just to get people's hopes up and then dash their dreams mercilessly. Or maybe they're just trying to lure people in to get the big ratings. I mean, it is television after all. Regardless, people will continue to believe in Bigfoot, and that is their right to do so. But you have to remember, until someone proves definitively that Bigfoot exists, all of that so-called found footage and evidence of its existence should be viewed with a healthy amount of skepticism. Well, that's all from the realm of the jungles of our world and the ones that have turned out some really strange things over the years. Were you surprised by some of the strange discoveries that turned up on this list? Which ones did you find the most shocking? Maybe you can even think of other bizarre finds that could have easily made it here. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to check out the other fascinating videos showing up on your screen. I'll see you next time.